She's smart, sassy, and very outspoken. Sarah Michelle Gellar segued from selling burgers to stealing soap scenes to slaying vampires. On this episode of Revealed, Sarah will set the record straight about her unusual childhood, her strained relationship with Susan Lucci, and her very own prince. Sarah Michelle Gellar is about to be revealed.
We didn't have the greatest relationship. I don't believe ambition or drive. I don't believe they're bad words. A debacle of epic proportions.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer made Sarah Michelle Gellar a household name, but Sarah was already an accomplished actress before she sunk her teeth into Buffy. In the next hour, you'll hear about her personal journey, her professional triumphs, and those moments that still make Sarah cringe.
This better not be embarrassing.
Oh, don't worry, Sarah. I had them put a non-embarrassing clause in my contract.
Hey, why didn't I think of that?
I had no idea you'd been doing this long.
So I was 4 years old.
Now, how did all of it start?
One of those stories, like the Schwab's drugstore story. I was 4 years old, and I was at this like cabaret type show for kids, and this woman came up to me and said, "Do you want to be on TV?" And I said, "Sure, my name is Sarah Michelle Gellar, I live at," and I gave her my address and my phone number. I was proud. I literally just learned it.
You slated yourself.
Yeah, literally. I mean, I did. I literally only just learned my phone number. I was 3 and a half or however old I was, and about a week later, my mother got this phone call and just turned to me, "What did you do?" "Oh, this nice lady wants me to be in movies." My mom's thinking it's like the biggest joke, and I met with her, and that's it. I started working. I did my first movie about like 2 months later.
What'd your mom think of it when it all started?
I think she thought it was a fluke. I think it wasn't something she invested a lot in. It certainly was a great way. You know, she was a single mom raising a child in New York City, and obviously financially that's incredibly difficult and incredible strain. So even just a little bit of modeling here and there would be great for my education. And she thought, well, if Sarah has fun and it works, then let's try it. And that's pretty much what it was when I was younger.
An only child, Sarah was 7 when her parents divorced. She doesn't talk about her father, who passed away in 2001, but she's happy to talk about what those early acting gigs meant to her. I read you had done 100 commercials.
I've done over 100 commercials. It paid for my New York school private education.
A very, very big message for grown-ups.
Do I look 20% smaller to you? I'm nice to McDonald's. When I order a regular burger at McDonald's, they make it with 20% less meat than Burger King. Unbelievable.
It was the first time that another advertising company had ever used another company's name in a commercial. We take for granted now, you know, Wendy's says Burger King, or this one says that one, Bounty says, you know, whatever it is. They didn't do that then. So I was 5 years old and I was doing a Burger King commercial and I mentioned McDonald's, and it was unheard of at the time. So McDonald's turned around and sued not only Burger King, they sued the advertising company, J. Walter Thompson, and they sued me at 5 years old.
Did you realize, though, at 5 I'm being sued?
No, I had no clue. I mean, I remember that, you know, all kids had their birthday parties at McDonald's play places, I think they were called. And so I remember, like, not being allowed to go at first because, God forbid, someone, and then my mother turned around and said to these people, I don't think that people who work at corporate McDonald's are really in the stores. I think it's okay.
Luckily, I know a perfect way to show McDonald's how I feel. I go to Burger King.
Eventually, the lawsuit was dropped.
And I did, let's see, there's a commercial I did with Seth Green.
I think we did a couple commercials together, and I may be making that up, but I know we did this one. It was a cookie ad.
It was a Duncan Hines commercial. So we love to bring that one out and scare each other.
How'd they make them so homemade tasting?
We're so little, and it's a play on the Maltese Falcon. And those people at Duncan Hines, always thinking.
I bet they just captured a mom and made her give them the recipe.
Sarah and Seth eventually reconnected on Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Young kids are all, you're either a professional or your parents have you in it, you know? And she and I were both driven by ourselves. It was like, your parents are on the outside and you just know this is what I want to do. This is something I seem to have an affinity for.
You worked in the theater in New York.
I did a lot of Broadway. I did Horton Foote with Matthew Broderick and Eric Stoltz. We did The Widow Clare. Now, I was about 9 years old, and I was in a play with Ferris. So I was the most popular person in my class. And then right when Eric took over, Some Kind of Wonderful came out. It was a great couple of years for me. And I have the distinction of being in the only Neil Simon Broadway show ever to close out of town. The only one.
The show was Jake's Women, with Stockard Channing, Peter Coyote, and Joyce Van Patten. After a trial run in San Diego, the cast was looking forward to Broadway.
And Peter Coyote got a call from the New York Times. It was really early in the morning saying, "What's your comment on the fact that Neil closed the show?" And that's how we all found out. It was pretty devastating.
And how old were you at the time?
I was about 13, which is a really hard age, and I had left school for 6 months and then all of a sudden had to, come right back in, and it was pretty difficult. And then about a year and a half later, Neil decided to do the show again. And at that point I thought, well, it's all I want to do. That's my show. I started that. And I was too old, which is the first time that I faced being too old.
Over the Hill at 14?
Over the Hill at 14.
When we return, a little girl talk.
That means no boys allowed. Abso-positively none.
And later, slaying vampires isn't as easy as it looks.
I broke down in tears and I said, I can't do this.
By the time Sarah Michelle Gellar was a teenager, she was already a showbiz veteran. She starred in commercials, performed on the stage, and appeared on television shows, including The Guiding Light and Spencer for Hire.
Are there moments where you cringe, like old TV appearances?
Oh,
Guest star?
constantly, it's the hair. It's always the hair.
Oh.
And the eyebrows. The eyebrows. People forget that, before you learn how to tweeze and you just have that thick black unibrow.
Oh wait, I saw Girl Talk.
No, you did not. No, you so did not.
That was great.
How did you get that?
I have ways.
It was a great idea. It was like sort of a Saturday Night Live talk show type thing for young girls, and it was Soleil Moon, Fry, and I, and we had huge guest stars, because it was New Kids on the Block and Tiffany.
So, do you have a boyfriend?
Joey Lawrence. This was big for the 80s, but it didn't get sold. We did 5 episodes, and then that was it. Can I have that tape when you're done with it, so I can burn it, please?
Hey, Soleil, you ever had a really, really weird dream?
No, but I'm working on it.
One time, I dreamed I was at the beach, and then all of a sudden, this big sand woman, we're talking tremendously chunky, starts chasing me down the beach chanting, "Sarah Gellar, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Sarah!"
Oh, goodness me. No, the other one that I get all the time is Swans Crossing. I still get people come up to me and remember Swans Crossing? I get that one. I get that one all the time.
Described as dynasty for teenagers, Swans Crossing was a daily syndicated soap that lasted only 3 months. Still, Sarah was acting and getting paid for it.
It was something that I really liked doing, but school always came first. I was also a figure skater. I did Taekwondo. I did everything, and I was sort of testing everything out. And it was only when I was 16, when I said, I need to figure out what I want to do, because it was always easy to do, one big project a year, a Broadway show, a movie of the week, a couple episodes of a show, and still have school. But then there comes that point where you need to figure out, is my life going to be about college? Is it going to be about, getting up and going to SAT prep courses and doing all that, or is this something that I really want to do? And it was a hard decision.
You have been doing this since you were 4 years old. Were you always aware sometimes when you didn't get jobs? What was that like?
Well, absolutely. See, the rejection, people always say, I would never let my children do that because of the rejection. But rejection is an incredibly real thing that I think people face in their life. And I think when you learn how to deal with it at an early age, it makes you deal with it much better. It's really no different than not getting the starting position on a Little League team or not being the lead in the school play. They're all forms of rejection. I just learned how to deal with them on an incredibly mature and understanding level very early. And luckily, because of what I did, if I didn't get one commercial, well, there's an audition tomorrow. So it was a really good way. The hard thing for me was when you're in school, that's a very, very tough age to miss 6 months of and then come back. And for me, I came back like nothing had changed, but to everyone else, I'd been gone for 6 months and didn't fit in anymore. And kids are, specifically girls, are incredibly cruel at that age. Anyone that says high school was the best time of their lives, man, I can't believe it.
For a while, Sarah attended New York's High School of Performing Arts, the school that inspired the movie fame.
I thought, well, now I'll be surrounded with people that are artistic, that like what I like, and I'll fit in, and it's a public school, so I'd be saving all the tuition. And I stayed there about a month. And I actually got kicked out.
Why'd you get kicked out?
Because they believe that you shouldn't be working professionally until they teach you everything that they want to do, that they need to teach you. But I was constantly missing school because I was working. I didn't like the school. It's not like the movie, the television show. People don't dance, and I expected literally Leroy to come dancing down the aisle, and it wasn't like that.
Instead, Sarah enrolled at the professional children's school, designed for students with irregular schedules.
It was all about academics. We don't need gym. We all have our extracurricular activities. We don't need to take these art classes, and so I was able to take my classes only in the morning so that I could audition in the afternoon. PCS was an amazing experience, and you look at my classmates, Jerry O'Connell, Tara Reid, Donald Faison. I mean, people that I still people say, how do you guys have reunions? And I said, well, yeah, just every Saturday, at the Coffee Bean, because I still see so many of the people I went to school with.
At that point, were you competitive?
I was competitive with myself. I wasn't. If someone next to me got an A and I got an A-, I wanted to get an A+ next time, not because of that person, but because I wanted to best myself. I found myself just competing with myself mainly. And I was able, because my credits, I had finished so many of my classes, because I would stay later and finish them, that I was able to graduate high school right before I turned 16, when I was 15.
I sense a drive. That's why.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't believe ambition or drive. I don't believe they're bad words. I think a lot of times they get misused, and especially on a woman, it becomes a bad thing.
Right.
I love what I do. I'm very lucky to be successful at that, and I'm very, very grateful to that. I watched all my friends go to college and go to graduate school and get out and feel incredibly lost and not know what they wanted to do, or then take these jobs where they weren't happy. But I get up every morning, and I love what I do, and I feel very blessed because of that.
Coming up, the dirt on Sarah's soap days.
We didn't have the greatest relationship, and it was one of those things that I didn't understand at the time.
And later, becoming Buffy.
Just a debacle of epic proportions.
Talented, ambitious, and driven, Sarah Michelle Gellar made acting a priority at an early age.
I'd go to school, and then I'd do my homework, and then I'd go to the theater, and then everyone at the theater would go out afterwards and play and then sleep till noon, but I had to finish my homework and be up the next day.
Just before her 16th birthday, Sarah landed the role of Kendall Hart, the devious daughter of daytime vixen Susan Lucci.
So was it a big deal when you got All My Children?
Oh, it was a huge deal. My mother watched All My Children when she was pregnant with me. I grew up watching All My Children. One of my best friends at the time who was in school with me was on All My Children. I mean, to me, it was just the greatest thing. And I got to stay in New York and finish school, and a full-time job, which is hard in New York City.
Thank God. Don't push me away. I need you. I know you need me to wait. What is this? What are you doing? Stop it! No! 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 Oh. No, you can't throw me out! Answer, where am I supposed to go?
Sarah was just a teenager, but her character was supposed to be in her early 20s.
The truth is, it's not challenging at all, because I think Sarah at 16 is more mature than Kendall will probably ever be.
Sarah was nominated for a Daytime Emmy twice, in 1994 and 1995.
You know my first reaction? Ah! It was sort of along the lines of my reaction. I don't think it's really sunk in yet.
It sunk in when Sarah took home the award in 1995.
And I think you try not to, but I think everyone, in their own right, everyone dreams about this. This is just the most amazing dream come true, and so yeah, I guess. You try not to think about it, though. You don't want to jinx yourself.
Were you surprised when you won the Emmy?
It was so weird, growing up, you watch all these award shows and you think it's just going to be this amazing culmination and just, this incredible night, and it was so exciting, and my best friend, Eva LaRue, we all went, we had a hotel room, we all got dressed up, and my mother was there, we all went, and my award was the second one of the night, and then they announced my name, and I went up there, and I remember being really scared because Kelly Ripa told me, she had lent me her shoes. And she told me that if I won, I didn't thank her, she was going to throw her shoe at me. So I remember looking really briefly out into the audience and seeing Kelly holding her foot in the air, like as a threat that if I didn't mention her, that I'd get the shoe thrown in my head. And I remember seeing that, you know, time's up, and then you walk backstage and you have this award, and then they really quickly take it away from you, and then you do all this press, and then they give it back to you, but it doesn't have your name on it. It's just, and they send you back into the audience, and it's kind of over. And I thought, well, that's kind of anticlimactic.
Sarah made sure to thank Kelly, but she wouldn't be working with her co-star much longer. Just days after winning the Emmy, Sarah announced she was leaving All My Children.
It was sort of unfortunate timing. I had wanted to leave for some time. I had felt that the situation wasn't great, and I'd been in a job for 3 years, which at my age, you know, at 17, that's a really long time. And I really wanted to spread my wings, and I wanted to try the things. I had gotten a couple of jobs, one of which was a role in Clueless, the movie, which of course at my age was like the only thing I wanted to do, and they wouldn't let me out to do it. And I really felt that it was time to move on. I'd been asking for a long time, and it was like the next night after when they told me that I could leave. So it sort of looked like I won and disappeared, but it certainly wasn't. It wasn't anything like that.
I read tabloid things that you and Susan Lucci had a contentious relationship. Is that grounded in fact, or is it just something that they used once you became successful later?
We didn't have the greatest relationship, and it was one of those things that I didn't understand at the time, and then for the longest time didn't even want to speak about it because it was difficult. It's very hard to come on to an existing show like that and shake things up. And soaps, they're very true in their ways and the way things work. And I don't think I really understood necessarily what was going on at the time. I was only 16 years old. But if I had to do it again, I would do it again in a heartbeat. I met some of the most amazing people who I'm still really friendly with to the day. And I feel like I learned so much about my craft on a soap because soaps are so technical. You have to learn just an incredible amount of dialogue in a really short period of time. You have to hit a mark without looking and not block someone's light, and you only get one take. And now those things come really easily, so I can actually only focus on the work now. But it was hard. It was really hard being there.
But that's interesting too, at 16, being self-possessed enough that you were of your own mindset.
Yes and no. I think at 16 I was a little confused because things weren't so great there and things were shaky, and I didn't get a lot of support from the producers of the show. But the cast, like I said over and over, I mean, they were amazing. And of course tabloids love to build stuff up, I'm sure. You know, luckily I don't read them that often. I mean, I can't say I don't ever. I try to read them when I'm not in them.
When did you want to come west?
When I was younger, my mother wanted to move out here. She felt that the quality of life would be better, and New York was so expensive. And I said, if you leave, I'm going to run away from home. I'm never leaving New York. I would never go. That's a hateful place. And it was when I left All My Children. I said, okay, if this is what I want to do, then you really have to come here. It's really hard. It's so hard to make it in New York. And so I moved out here like 3 months after I left All My Children.
You look like a California girl.
It's the hair, it's the blonde hair. I like having grass. I like having places for my dogs. All I wanted growing up was a dog, and you know we couldn't have a dog in New York because you can't really walk a dog, and apartments are so small. So I had like the New York version of the dog pet. I had the frogs, the fish, the rabbit. You know, you can have a dog out here and open up your front yard, and they can play, and it's a nice life out here.
Sarah's mother joined her daughter in Los Angeles soon after.
You give her so much credit. But yet she wasn't a stage mother.
No, she was the farthest thing. School was always the most important thing. If my grades dropped below an A-, I had to stop auditioning. I mean, school was always, the education was really important that I got. And it was always something that I wanted to do, and she would tell me before every job, now remember, if you don't want to do this anymore, you have to tell me. You always have to speak up. She taught me everything I know, and if I can be half the person that she is, then I'm in pretty good shape.
I think it's really great in a way, though, that you're personally thought of as being a really strong, self-possessed woman. And also, because of the character you play on Buffy, you're really like a role model. And I know you probably hate hearing that.
No, it's an honor. I mean, there are certain complications that come with that, but I think it only, in the end, makes you a better person. Because if people think of you that way, I think it's something that you want to continue and you want to put out that way. I know what it was like for me younger having role models, and I mean I still have role models to this day, and you still look up to certain people and you want to emulate them, and it's because they put something out there that is special, that's something that people want to be like.
You know, who are your role models?
Who are my role models? Let's see. Well, my mom is the obvious one, and an amazing woman, and has done so much with so little, and I wouldn't be sitting here right now if it wasn't for everything that she gave up for me. In terms of actors, there are so many. There's people like Sandy Bullock, who is just the consummate professional and such a nice person, and always people like to be around her. And I love Annette Bening and Stockard Channing. There's so many. I think that's lucky now. There's so many women in this industry that are really amazing and really talented, and there's so many to look up to.
And also women that are encouraging to other women.
Yeah, it's not nasty. I think you always heard these old Hollywood stories of how, you know, oh, I don't like the younger one, all about Eve, or any of these stories, but I certainly have never felt that. I've been very lucky.
Next on Revealed, Buffy breaks down.
I feel horrible, and I'm sobbing, and the mascara is just running down my face.
And later, a prime-time romance.
My relationships had always been really private before Freddie.
For Sarah Michelle Gellar, 1995 was a year of change. The native New Yorker left All My Children and headed west. But Hollywood didn't exactly roll out the red carpet.
I've been out here about 6 months, and I was, you know, really getting a lot of doors closed to my face. It was really hard. You know, you get that thing, you come off a soap, you have an Emmy, and it doesn't mean anything out here. And I was really struggling.
But Sarah's days of struggle were numbered thanks to a casting call for a new television show, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The series was based on the 1992 movie of the same name.
I had gone on this general meeting with Fox. They said, oh, we have this project coming up. We'd love you to meet on it, you know, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And I said, oh, like the movie? And they said, no, not like the movie. And I said, I'd love to, but I had finally gotten a job, and I was going to Australia for 2 months to do this movie of the week, which was an incredible experience. I just turned 18. You know, I was off in Australia, my first job by myself, you know, and just...
They like to have a good time,
and
the
yeah, they like to have, and I was legal. 18 is legal in Australia. And, you know, we were filming at the beach, and I didn't want to miss out on it. And I'd finished the project, and my manager called and said, look, you know, they're getting to the end of casting for Buffy. You're really right for it, but you have no guarantees. Like, do you want to come back? And it was Carnival out there. And I'd always wanted to go, and I had my heart set on going. And for some reason, I was like, okay, I'll come home.
Smart move. Sarah met with Buffy creator Joss Whedon and the producers of the television show.
And they called me that night and said, we want you to screen test. I'm like, this is like a Cinderella story. This is how it's supposed to happen. I have this feeling. I come home. And they called me about 3 days later and said, you know, we changed our mind. And I was like, okay, we don't want you to test for Buffy, we want you to test for Cordelia. And I said, I need to think about it. Because I'd just come off 3 years of playing this stereotypical bad girl character, and I thought, well, if I do this now, am I ever going to be able, you know, to do anything else? Cut to 3 years later when I'm begging for the role in Cruel Intentions and no one can see me as the bad girl. But I said, you know, I pass, I don't want to do it.
Did they have a different Buffy they wanted?
They didn't have anyone. They were going to test Buffy's and Cordelia's on the same day,
Okay.
but they wanted me to test for Cordelia, and I said I don't want to do it. And I sat back and I read the pilot again, and there was something really special about it. And I said, you know, I don't have a job. It's just a pilot. You know, if it doesn't turn out well, it won't get picked up. I don't have to worry about it. It's, you know, it's the WB. It was kind of an unheard of network at the time. Okay, I'll go and I'll screen test.
Sarah had no idea what was in store for her.
I had left the test that night, and they called me and they said, okay, there's good news and there's good news. The good news is we want to hire you for Cordelia. But we didn't find a Buffy. So if you want to come back in, we're going to start reading Girls on Saturday. You're the only person they responded to. Come back in now that you have like a better understanding of the show. And that's a very risky thing to do, because then sometimes what happens is they say you have this job, but then they see you as something else, but they don't really see you as that, and you could risk really losing both roles. Mm-hmm. So I came back in on Saturday, and I read, and I worked for about 2 hours with them. I would go in, they'd give me notes, I'd go out, I'd see 2 or 3 more girls come in. I'd go back in. This went on for 3 or 4 more days. I went in Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, and finally, after probably like 7 hours of auditioning all told, they said, okay, we're gonna test again, we want you to come back in. But the way a screen test works when you have a studio and a network is you test for one company first and then the next. And I said, well, I'm only gonna do it if I can get guarantees that I'm gonna go to the network automatically. And they said, we won't give that to you. I said, fine, I'm stepping back, I can't do this anymore, I'll be Cordelia. They said, please, please, please come. So I went to the studio on Friday, and then I had to wait till Monday to go to the network. There were 2 girls, and the way they do it, it's so hard the way they do it out here. They bring both girls in. The first girl goes in, and they tell her, please wait. Second girl goes in, they say, please wait. Then they say, Sarah, we'd like you to come back in again. I say, that girl, you can go home. I mean, it's horrible. It's a horrible process.
But the process got even worse.
And so they said they want me to come back in and read one more time. And I broke down in tears and I said, I can't do this. I'll be Cordelia, I'll be so happy. I can't, I'm doubting myself, I feel horrible, and I'm sobbing, and the mascara is just running down my face, and like the snot's dripping, and please come in, please come in. I'm like, I can't do this. So they dragged me in, and I walked in, and it's a room full of about 30 people, and they all started applauding and said, you know, congratulations, you got the role. And,
Man,
and then I just started crying harder, and then it was just.
I mean, that you really had to jump through hoops. I mean, come on.
And I will never let them forget it. I remind them all the time.
What do you say to Joss?
I just remind them all the time how unsure of me they were, how they made me, you know, they tortured me, so I just get to torture them back.
The torture didn't end when production began.
We shot the pilot, and the pilot was a disaster. It was, I can't even begin to tell you, like, just a debacle of epic proportions. I mean, it was supposed to be a 6-day shoot. It became 9 days. The studio wanted to shut us down. And then they announced that we were going to be a mid-season replacement. And the pity looks that I got from people, oh, honey, mid-season replacement on the WB, you'll get a job next year. I mean, literally, there's a, my favorite story of all was I met Kiefer Sutherland a couple years ago with some friends. We were all having dinner. And we were talking, and he said, you know, what are you doing? I said, oh, I'm doing this pilot, you know, called Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And he said, I think my dad was in that movie. And I said, yeah, he was. And he's out there making a television show of that movie. He looks at me and he goes, you seem talented. You'll get another job next year. And I finally ran into him like 6 years later. He's now on my favorite show. I'm obsessed with 24. And both of our shows were shooting on the same lot. And I got to go up to him and he said, well, guess I was wrong about that one.
Despite the doubters, the cast went to work on the first season of Buffy. After shooting the first 12 episodes, Sarah went off to film the teen thriller I Know What You Did Last Summer. Buffy hadn't aired yet, and Sarah still didn't know if anyone would watch.
We were filming in this really small town in North Carolina. They didn't even get the WB because WB didn't have that much clearance in those days. So I would call home like, is anybody watching the show? You know, does anybody like the show? And she's like, yeah, I think people like it. You know, it's okay. No clue what was going on, like waiting in pins and needles to see if the show was even gonna get picked up for another season.
When we return, how to charm the boss.
No producers and network of a show like to hear you talk about the fact that you think their decision's really stupid and lame.
And later, Sarah opens up about the love of her life.
I don't want to pretend like it's a secret, and I don't want to pretend like it's something I want to hide.
When Buffy the Vampire Slayer hit the air in 1997, Sarah Michelle Gellar had no idea how quickly the Buffy buzz would grow. At the time, the 19-year-old actress was shooting her first starring movie role in I Know What You Did Last Summer. The film featured other stars in the making, Jennifer Love Hewitt, Ryan Phillippe, and a tall, dark, and handsome actor named Freddie Prinze Jr. But more on him later.
The day Sarah wrapped I Know What You Did Last Summer, she flew to Atlanta to start filming Scream 2.
It was the first time I was kind of in a big city, and all of a sudden, people on the street were, that's Buffy, that's Buffy. And that was my first time when I really realized that people were actually watching the show. I had no clue. I'd never seen it.
Buffy's fan base was building.
The WB said, okay, we're gonna let this show sort of run its course, because we were really still finding ourselves the first year. Were we funny? Were we campy? Were we scary? And then the WB really said, okay, you know, go run with it. You know, have fun, make this show. And I think it was really by the end of the second season when we really became sort of that standout show.
But with success came controversy.
Being outspoken, as you are, has it ever gotten you in trouble?
Absolutely. You know, it's hard. There's a really fine line. There was a whole thing going on for a while where people were really blaming television and film for crime and things that were going wrong, specifically with Columbine and all these things that were happening. And I found myself getting in a lot of trouble at that point because they pulled an episode of Buffy that I thought was really wonderful. And I thought it was the stupidest decision I'd ever seen.
It just happened that the show was going to air about 3 or 4 weeks after the Columbine incident. And so they came to us and said, you know, we can't do this.
The episode was all about she gains this power to be able to hear people's thoughts. She can't control how many voices she hears at a time, so it just became chaos in her head.
And what she realizes is that the pain that she feels, the awkwardness of adolescence, that everybody feels. So she starts to like pick up conversations and snippets, and then she hears that someone's gonna kill everybody.
This time tomorrow, I'll kill you all.
The one voice that really started to stand out was the distant loner feeling like no one would notice if he wasn't there, and he was up in a bell tower with a gun.
And so of course she assumes that he's gonna shoot everyone, and they have this whole conversation about how he's so misunderstood and people treat him badly, and she says, you don't understand, everybody feels that way.
My life happens to, on occasion, suck beyond the telling of it. Sometimes more than I can handle. And it's not just mine. Every single person down there is ignoring your pain because they're too busy with their own.
And she finally says, you know, give me the gun, and he hands her the gun, and she says to him, why were you gonna shoot everyone? That's not the answer. And he said, I was gonna shoot myself. I was gonna put myself out of this misery.
So it wasn't a show about violent rage and aggression and disaffected youth taking out their anger on, you know, unsuspecting students. It was about the isolation of high school.
So it was just this great lesson about what was wrong. Oh no, kid had a gun in school. Can't show it on television.
Things were so sensitive at the time that we were more than willing to take it off the air for a while. It has aired since then. But I see her point too, because it was, you know, really, you know, people become so afraid of, you know, offending or saying the wrong message that you start to trample on certain rights of freedom of speech.
And it made me so mad. But, you know, of course, no producers and network of a show like to hear you talk about the fact that you think their decision's really stupid and lame.
It's a bold thing for her to do that, because she puts herself on the line and says, this is what I believe in.
Sarah also puts herself on the line for her friends.
Sarah is so outgoing and so just gung-ho, and she's nurturing, and she takes you under her wing. And it's so strange because people think I'm the strong one, and it's the opposite. You know, when you're with Sarah, you sort of feel safe.
She gets a bad rap sometimes because she's assertive, and I think that's unfair, because she stands up for herself, she stands up for the crew, and she stands up for the integrity of the show, the character, things that we all discussed that we would have liked to have seen done that somebody said we can't do that. She stood up for that, and she got labeled difficult, which is a sad label to get for someone like her.
You know, there's a certain point where I feel like actors need to be quiet and people don't want to hear my thoughts on politics, and, you know, people just want me to stop talking. But you do have a voice, and people will listen to you, and if you're in a position where kids might look up to you, and if I could stop one kid from someone gives them a cigarette and they go, that's not cool, then I'm happy. My job is done.
Up until now, Sarah hasn't said much about her personal life, despite the fact that her romance with Freddie Prinze Jr. is no secret.
Pretty much the luckiest guy on the planet, so I got a lot of love for that girl, and I always will.
My relationships had always been really private before Freddie, and we had a really good, like 5 months before it got out there, so we really had 4 or 5 months to sort of develop our relationship, and luckily we had been friends for a long time, so there was a lot of history there.
Coming up next on Revealed.
You know, you're 22 years old just trying to figure out your life.
Sarah Michelle Gellar and Freddie Prinze Jr. have shared the big screen, but it's their time off camera that gets the most attention.
I mean, the private life that is out there isn't what people think. You know what I mean? It's like we keep what's important to us very private, and ain't nobody gonna find out.
It's hard when people make comments on the street about your relationship, where people feel like they know you, and you know, you're 22 years old just trying to figure out your life, and people in magazines say, well, that won't last, or oh, I saw him, you know, making out with this person, or it's difficult. Or you try to have private moments, and there's a guy with a camera, you know, 50 feet away.
People try to infiltrate our lives at times, but they see us walking down the street and getting an ice cream cone, and that's not. We're a little deeper than that. We're a little deeper than 31 flavors.
Do you think in a way that you help each other because you both understand it?
Absolutely. You know, being with another actor has its disadvantages and its great advantages. You know, I can come home and say, I had the worst hair day, and he'll actually understand what that means, where most guys would be, shut up, who cares? You know, so he does understand that to a degree. You know, like last night when I was having trauma because I had nothing to wear today and I didn't know what to wear, and that was a whole horrible thing, so it was drama. It was big drama last night.
And what did he say?
He took this out and said, wear this and be quiet.
He's got good taste.
He has very good taste. He has excellent taste. Clothing and jewelry. He has excellent taste. Another plus of a male actor.
In April 2001, the couple became engaged.
How great of a guy is he? He's so perfect for her. The two of them are such a nice balance, and he's so totally like kind of mellow and kicked back, and she's a little bit more hyper, you know, and fun-loving and gregarious, and they just blend and complement each other perfectly.
They just seem to bring out the best in each other, and they really seem to like their friends and family. They're very family-oriented. They lead a life that I think most people would be surprised. It's almost like what's exotic to them is what's normal to us.
Why do you think it works?
We balance each other out. I'm a little crazy. He's a little saner. You know, he always said I was way too mature and that he was a child, and we sort of met in the middle. I've learned to like comic books and video games. He has a new appreciation for antique books.
That relationship has had a profound effect on her, being calm and taking everything a little bit more lightly. When you get criticized as publicly as she has, it's so helpful to have at least one person who's always in your corner, who you feel is objective, but is supportive as well.
This is someone that I love. This is someone that I enjoy talking about, and I don't want to pretend like it's a secret, and I don't want to pretend like it's something I want to hide. We sort of, I mean, I don't want to say we complete each other because it sounds like, you know, a line from a Jane Choir. But I understand that line now. I understand the importance and the seriousness of that comment, where before it was a really cute catchphrase from a movie, it means something to me now.
Just when every aspect of Sarah's life seemed perfect, she was hit with a bombshell. After 5 seasons and 100 episodes, the producers of Buffy the Vampire Slayer announced that the show was being sold to a higher bidder. Buffy was leaving the WB for UPN.
Surprise, it was about money. And what the main thing was that on the WB they had never had a show go to 5 years before, and licensing agreements and such, it's all very technical, but that's the time generally when the network that airs the show starts paying the producers of the show, in our case 20th Century Fox, a lot more money, and they could not agree on that sum.
Buffy and the WB sort of went hand in hand. We'd sort of made each other, and of course you want to be where you feel like your family is, and it's a very daunting, you know, a very sort of daunting task, and everyone kept saying, well, they'll just, you know, they'll save the UPN now. And you had all those people, it was sort of split 50-50. People either wanted the show to be this huge success and prove that we could save another network, or people were waiting for us to fail.
When you are on a network, in a way, you know, in a business sense, they're kind of like your family. And the fact that they would, that for even a business reason, that they would decide that they didn't want the show, you can't help but feel personally hurt. You can't help but feel like wounded, you know.
I remember it was about 8 in the morning, we were in Australia, and the phones were ringing off the hook, and it was a double whammy day. It was, I found out the show moved to UPN, and then I found out that a local radio station gave out our address. So it was one of those just, I didn't know which end was which.
How can they do that?
I don't know. I have no idea. We had this beautiful house in Australia, and it was right on the water. And so all these tour boats would go by. In the beginning, you know, you didn't think anything of them. And then as it went on, the tour boats started getting closer and closer to our home as the months went on, to the point where you could actually hear, and you'd hear, and they'd be in all different languages. Oh, Sarah Michelle Gellar and Freddie Prinze Jr. And you'd just see the cameras start coming out, and yeah, don't live on the water. That's what I learned.
Sarah and Freddie were in Australia shooting the movie version of the cartoon Scooby-Doo. They played the fictional couple, Daphne and Fred.
Now, were you even born when the cartoon was on?
Well, it started in the 60s. I mean, you know, it was on when I was...
But I mean, do you remember watching it?
Yeah, I think that's the amazing thing about Scooby-Doo, is that no matter what country you're in, everybody knows Scooby-Doo. Everyone knows Ruh-Roh. Everyone identifies with a dog. It's something that's iconic, not just in America. So it's overwhelming. It's always difficult to take a cartoon character and bring it to the screen, because you're taking what's essentially a flat cartoon character and trying to make it human and give it human qualities. Daphne is known as being the one that always gets kidnapped, the one that can't take care of herself. She's kind of flighty. People forget, you know, I'm not Buffy, I'm Sarah. I act like Buffy, and I can just as easily act like Daphne.
Sarah and Freddie brought a pair of cartoon characters to life in Scooby-Doo. The couple also lent their voices to the animated feature Happily Never After.
And I get to be Cinderella, which is like my dream. I've been, you know, as Freddie said, I've been training my whole life for this role, the princess.
Coming up next on Revealed.
There are times like you want to roll so badly and you lose it and you think your life is over.
Sarah Michelle Gellar has been performing almost her entire life. From child actor to teen sensation to television icon, there's no telling what the future holds for this self-proclaimed workaholic.
I like to perform, I like to entertain, I like to make people laugh and smile, and I'm very lucky. I also get paid to do what I like to do, which is a hard thing on top of it. But you know, there are times like you want to roll so badly and you lose it and you think your life is over. This is, mind you, this is when I was 10. You know, I understand a lot more now.
Sarah's that girl that the glass isn't half empty, it's half full. And that is an amazing quality to have. So she always sees sort of the flip side.
What do you think people would be most surprised about the real Sarah Michelle Gellar?
How uncoordinated and klutzy I am. If there's a wall, I'll walk into it. If there's a wire, I will trip on it. I am, like, for a slayer, I can trip, fall on anything.
But you got your moves.
No, Buffy has her moves. I can walk on set and do a coordinated fight sequence and get every move right, and then they'll yell cut, and I will trip on a chair. I'm the worst.
Oh, is your nickname Sassy?
A lot of people call me that.
Why do they call you Sassy?
I think it was just a nickname for Sarah. Also, sometimes, you know, you don't want to yell out Sarah, Sarah Michelle, you know, in a parking lot or in a mall and stuff like that. So I think my friend Bridget, my makeup artist in the show, started calling it me one day, and it just, you know how nicknames are, they stick.
When are you happiest?
When am I happiest? When I get to sleep in. Sleeping in for me is like 8:30 though, so it's not that good. I like quiet days when I can, you know, be with Freddie and we get to walk our dogs and go to coffee and play.
What are you most surprised about?
Just the road life takes. My mother always taught me that everything that happens for a reason, and it doesn't always. You don't always know what that reason is. You don't know necessarily 6 weeks, 6 months, or 6 years, but life is like kind of like a weird jigsaw puzzle. And when you look back, you go, "Oh, I see why that happened to me, and I see why this happened, because it made me the person that I am and the person that's sitting here. And I'm proud of who I am, and I think I'm a good person, and I'm proud of the decisions that I've made in my life."
Wouldn't have wanted to do anything else?
No, I wouldn't do anything else.
No regrets?
Not yet. There was this lyric in this Broadway musical, Chess, which is one of my favorite shows, and it was, let's see if I can get this right. Who taught me, baby, no, let me get this right. Who taught me, baby, how the, see, look at this, just blonde blankness. I hear you laughing, Nicole. Who taught me, baby, how the few who win acquire what their hearts desire. It ain't practice, it ain't skill, they'll help, but not as much as wanting will. All right, thank God.